Almost. Major. Holy fucking shit, this is major! Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Almost Major, where we talk about the many major studios and the films they release. My name is Kevin Tudor. I'm here with Bryden Doyle.
Hello.
And Charlie Nash.
Hello.
And joining us is a special guest by the name of Blake Bergman. How are you?
Hey, doing all right. Glad to be here.
Awesome. And today we are talking about two films in one, and we are talking about Critters from 1986 and Critters 2, the main course from 1988. But first off, we're talking about Critters from 1986. This was released April 11th, 1986 at number 6, opened at 540 theaters and maxed out at 633 theaters. Budget of $2 million, opening weekend of $1.6 million, and overall gross of $13.1 million. Top 5 films that weekend was The Money Pit, Police Academy 3, Back in Training, Band of the Hand, Gung Ho, and Offbeat. Blake, any takes on those top 5?
Man, Money Pit's always a good, fun time. Band of the Hand, I haven't heard that name in quite a while. That movie's a little bit of a trip.
Yeah.
But yeah, I need to go revisit that one. But yeah, that one's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Interesting group of films.
Yeah, definitely. Number one song in the US this week is Rock Me Amadeus by Falco, and number one song in Canada this week is Secret Lovers by Atlantic Star. Plot description from Google: when strange fuzzy creatures from outer space arrive on the farm, the Brown family, Jay, Helen, and their daughter April and their son Brad must fend off the malevolent little aliens. Two bounty hunters with superhuman abilities follow the aggressive beasts from beyond, but the warriors aren't terribly effective, leaving the Brown family to battle the furballs and rescue April from their clutches all by themselves. This was written by Dominic Murr and Stephen Herrick. This is the first script from Murr. After this, wrote a lot of Full Moon Pictures films under the name August White. Directed by Stephen Herrick. This was his first film after this, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure from 1989, Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead in 1991, The Mighty Ducks in 1992, Mr. Holland's Opus in 1995, Life or Something Like It in 2002, and 11 episodes of the reboot of MacGyver.
You also forgot about 101 Dalmatians.
Damn it. What year is that? 97?
96? I saw that in theaters. I must have been 5 years old when I saw that in theaters. Yeah.
I'm looking it up, running the 101 Dalmatian numbers. One second.
Yeah, the dogs, I don't remember much about it except all of Glenn Close's outfits and the fact that the dogs dupe her into falling into a pit of molasses, I believe.
Yeah, I hate when that happens. It was 96.
Yeah, it was, yes. So I was 5 years old. And then I know Stephen Herrick didn't direct 102 Dalmatians, but for whatever reason, it's burned into my brain that the dogs bake Glenn Close into a cake. Like a literal cake.
Sure. That was directed by Kevin Lima, who directed Tarzan, A Goofy Movie, and Enchanted.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to get your start on 102 Dalmatians. What can I tell you?
I also think that movie starts out with her in, like, a psychiatric facility. Like, she's so traumatized by the events of the first film. And then she has, like, PTSD or, like, amnesia or something. And then she, like, gets all the flashbacks back and goes, like, oh, I'm gonna double down. I'm just gonna go full-on psycho for this
I think that's how, like, a lot of Disney movies start. Doesn't Fox and the Hound start with, like, the Hound and the psychiatrist? You know what? Never mind.
Oh, Jesus.
Starring Dee Wallace as Helen Brown. This is a first movie where she is credited as Dee Wallace Stone. Before this, she was in The Hills Have Eyes in 1977, The Howling in 1981, E.T. in 1982, and Cujo in 1983. After this, Popcorn in 1991, The Frighteners in 1996, 2 episodes of Felicity in 2002, House of the Devil in 2009, 1 episode of Law and Order L.A. in 2010.
I have not seen it.
Gotta get on that.
Yeah.
Lords of Salem in 2012.
Yeah, she and Rob Zombie are pals now, it seems like.
Yeah. Was she in 31?
No, but she was in 3 from Hell, and she was in The Munsters.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And Lords of Salem and 2007 Halloween. Yeah.
Okay. She also does come back in the reboot that was a few years ago, but she doesn't have the same name. Her name is like Aunt D, so that they, I don't know, wouldn't get sued or something like that. No, I'm not engaging with that.
Not my critters.
No, absolutely not.
Hashtag not my critters.
Billy Green Bush as Jay Brown, M. Emmett Walsh as Harv. Dominic Murr, the writer, wanted him in a movie after seeing Blood Simple in theaters. And this is the first non-extra role for Billy Zane. That's right. And he gets fucking all of his guts ripped out by a critter. You love to see it.
With a rat tail. He has a rat tail as well.
Of course he does.
Yeah.
Of course. Trivia. Corey Burton, who voices the critters who came up with their language, which he described in interviews as combining elements of French and Japanese. Although promoted as New Line's answer to Gremlins, which came out in 1984, the screenplay had been written and bought before Gremlins was announced. Of course, it got greenlit because after Gremlins happened, but Herrick had based the screenplay on a nightmare he experienced as a child long before Gremlins was even conceived. But in the making of, producers say that Gremlins exist and got the movie bought. I already said that. Dominic Murr wrote this movie at 19 years old before moving to LA as a way to get into the door. Got into the door working for Roger Corman, as everybody in LA wanted to do. Genre Pictures probably did. When Murr got to working in the editing room of New World Pictures, which was Corman's production company, is where he met Stephen Herrick, who asked if he had a script. He took that script, did a run of it, and they wanted to go around town and ask dentists and doctors for money and make it indie style on 16mm. They ran into some producers that wanted to take it on, and Roger Corman was the first person attached. He wanted to do it at a lower budget than it was eventually made for, which it was already made for $2 million. So then by happenstance, the producers were at an event for a New World Pictures movie and ran into Bob Shea, the head of New Line. They met again, and Shea said that he wanted to do the movie. So there. The Chiodos, who are the people that did the special effects, got the job on this movie because the special effects guy for Nightmare on Elm Street was either going to do Nightmare on Elm Street 2 or Critters. He went with Nightmare on Elm Street 2, but recommended the Chiodos for Critters, and it was their first film. So that's great. The original script was much more of an R-rated film, still a horror comedy, but the horror was much more vicious and even had a few of the family members die in the original script. I think the body count in this movie is like a cop and I think
Billy
that might be
Zane.
it. Oh, yeah. Well, there you go.
All those critters, too.
Oh, come on. That's not a body count. They should have lived. There is a poster for a movie called Mutant in the Sun's Room, which is also titled Night Shadows. And apparently because of poor box office results, the film was the last to be released by Film Ventures International. The president of Film Ventures International disappeared shortly afterwards, taking $1 million from the company's offers with him. Nothing has been heard from him ever since. And I just thought that was interesting. My man took his mutant money and ran. And lastly, the original ending had the house blow up and not come back to life. The ending that exists now was made very, very late. So late that the original ending had already been shipped out to theaters. The writer Murr tells a story of some of his cousins went to go see it opening day in Salem, Oregon with the original ending where the house doesn't come back to life, and then saw it in Portland later that night with the ending that it is today. So that's wild.
I like it. I like it as if the house was a character that died. The body count was also the house.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Which apparently was a miniature, and it looks so good. Like, it looks so
does.
good. And also, goddamn, when they blow up that house, that's like Zabriskie Point. They blow the hell out of that house, don't they?
Zabriskie Point, that was the reference that they were working off of, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Of all the planets in the galaxy, they chose ours. They hide in small places.
This phone is dead.
What?
They light the dark.
Jay, any luck?
Just a minute.
There's nothing cute about them. They've come a long way, and they're hungry.
Dad's all torn up and Mom's got like a harpoon sticking in her neck and they're getting bigger.
Critters. They bite.
But that is all the trivia I have. Blake, as our guest, would you like to give us your initial thoughts on Critters?
Yeah, so I've seen Critters a few times. It's been a while, though, so it was a good refresher. First of all, I completely forgot that it was in the middle of nowhere, Kansas.
Oh, yeah?
And I love that because it reminded me, have you ever seen like Bluebell ice cream commercials?
Oh, yeah.
Like, oh yeah, it was cheesy like that. I love that. And as a kid, I grew up in Kansas City, Missouri. So
yeah.
I sort of laughed at that whole aspect of things. It's obviously embellished for the movie, but it that cracked me up. Yeah, I really like its tone, trying to do a lot of the atomic age kind of movies, and just the creature feature aspect. With all that, it also is a little bit more vicious than I remembered it being.
Mm.
And I really love that aspect. As a kid, I sort of compartmentalized it, as it was like, oh, a little not tame, but more the family friendly kind of variety monster movie. And
Mm-hmm.
going back to it, and everybody's blood and guts are flying all over the place, I was like, oh, this is way more awesome than I remember it being. And it's still plenty schlocky, and lots of fun in that regard. But yeah, it's I especially like the Chiodo's work. I watched Killer Clowns from Outer Space the other day as well, and I just love their creature aspects through the roof, especially not only their puppetry, but I call it sort of the Chiodo splat.
Mm.
Basically, anytime one of these creatures are gunned down, they just blow up all over the place. So that was one of my favorite rememberings of this go around. But yeah, this movie's a great time, lots of fun. So yeah.
Yeah, if you have the Blu-ray, there's a behind the scenes where it shows like the best part to watch is the Chiodos just with archive footage of how they made the critters, and like getting one to like walk on its own, and it has this entire contraption, and how they were able to remote control the critter balls and whatnot. It's just like it's so awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, it's insane, and for this to be really their first one, it's pretty crazy. I guess I was reading a little bit where the scene where he's eating the firecracker and then the smoke's coming out of his mouth, and stuff like that. I guess there was like two puppeteers or something. I could be wrong on that, but there was two puppeteers controlling the eyes and the other one controlling the mouth at the same time. So yeah, it was just interesting. And for this really to be their first big effort, yeah, it's just through the roof. So
Yeah.
for sure.
And then 2 years later, doing Killer Clowns, directing it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy.
I had seen this movie before. It's a fun time. I really like it. I'm a big fan of the Critters. I watched Critters 2 for the first time also, and Critters 3. And even no matter what, they will never make me not love the Critters, because I just love those little guys. Especially when we get into the second one. Oh my god. Just nothing better than watch those critters eat meat and just laugh at themselves. It's great. I love them so much. Yeah, I love how it's kind of like a very Americana 50s meets like Gremlins. Also, it's kind of like Andy Griffith going to hell kind of thing. I like that. But yeah, it's just a really, really, it's a fun time, and it's very, like I said, like more than anything, yeah, the work by the Chiodos is just top tier stuff, and I love the personality the critters have. Could care less about the actors. I'm just here to talk about the critters. But I think there was a story, I forgot to put it in the trivia, that apparently they wanted to put like one subtitle for when the critters talking to Bob Shea, like, that's stupid, we're not going to do that. So they still put in some ones, and they put the ones where it has one of the greatest F-bombs of all time, where the critter says fuck, and like the test audience like erupted, like would not stop laughing, and then Bob Shea was like, make them talk the whole damn movie, I don't care.
Yeah.
Charlie, what do you think of the Critters?
Yeah, I had not seen this before, nor the second one, which we'll get to, but I had a fun time. I mean, I think I was texting you while I was watching it. I assumed that these were just, I mean, it is very Gremlins-esque, but I kind of was delighted by the fact that there was a whole, like, expository, like, setup for the critters that they escape from, like, this
From a
jail
giant
planet.
Meteor.
Yeah, from a giant meteor. I do wonder what they got arrested for. I assume, like, tax evasion or something. But yeah,
They got arrested for being little, look at them,
being
little
shits.
shitheads. Yeah. They ate all the meat on the ship.
But I found that I was like, oh wait, there's like backstory to this, like, and they have this whole weird lore to it that I found. I was like, oh, this is endearing. And then I was surprised also, and it's interesting. This is why I kind of liked this one, and also what I liked is that they didn't deal with this in Critters 2. They kind of just get to the critters, but they did set up a lot of backstory for everybody before the critters show up in Kansas. The characters themselves, I mean, they're all, it's, very much trying to comment on, like we talked about, the 1950s-esque type of family dynamics, and the characters themselves aren't like anything special. They're archetypes, but at the same time it does set up some stakes, so when the critters do land, we know who everybody is and what their relationships are and whatnot. And not like character development or dramatic. I don't go to Critters for anything dramatic in terms of dramatic storytelling or how fleshed out things are, but at least they took their time and were a little patient. I think that the critters show up like 25 minutes in, so by the time they do, chaos does reign, we do kind of know where everybody is, who everybody is. The dad sucks. Dee Wallace, I do like. I was a little disappointed because at first she's just like, I am mother. That is all I need to be. And then she just decides, but then she starts kicking ass, and I was like, okay, now we're getting somewhere. Good for you, letting Dee Wallace kick ass. Yeah, I had a fun time. I mean, yeah, you basically go to this movie for exactly what we were talking about, the Chiodos, special effects and whatnot. And is it anything like magnificent or outstanding in the genre? Not really. Is it a lot of fun and, a good way to spend, 86 minutes? I think so. It's also funny. I mean, I meant, I saw the new Jane Schoenbrunn film. I saw the TV Glow the day before I saw this, which is all about teenagers who are very lonely and put all of their emotional investment into like a very cheesy kind of 90s show, those types of like Buffy the Vampire Slayer-esque shows that don't exist anymore. And I couldn't help but think that this colored my appreciation of Critters a little bit, is to just think that there were kids in the 1980s who felt very isolated and alone, who probably related to these little stinkers and all the chaos that they cause, and how we don't get movies like this anymore. Like I've said a million times in this New Line series, or probably this entire show. I don't know. But yeah, a nice little throwback to 80s movies that were throwbacks to 50s creature movies. And, I had a good time.
You need to go through the list of movies we covered to see which ones you would say, we do get movies like this. And probably it's unfortunate.
I don't know, like, boat trip? I don't know.
No, we don't. Thank God.
I guess we don't.
Feel like Van Wilder? No, we don't. We took it out back and shot it.
We brought it out behind a barn.
Yes.
We sent it to the space jail with the critters.
Yeah. That is where we should send every DVD copy of Van Wilder.
I sentence you to 100 viewings of National Lampoon's Van Wilder, and may God have mercy on your soul. I'm taking that partly from the Mr. Show sketch where everyone has to watch Coupon the movie as their sentencing, and then like Odenkirk slams the gavel. Who wants to go Friday?
Very off topic, but I swear I'll make this quick. I work as a peer support specialist now, which involves me going in to visit people at their homes sometimes. And of course, because I'm a movie person, I'm always interested in like talking about movies with people for self-care. And it's funny, there was one house where I went to and someone was like, yeah, my friend gave me a bunch of movies over there and I saw Van Wilder in that. And I was like, oh, so you haven't watched all these? And they were like, no. And I was like, very tempted to just take that and be like, I'm taking this away from you as a public service favor.
That would be very funny if they were like Drew Barrymore in 50 First Dates and they just watch Van Wilder every day because it's all they have.
Oh God, Jesus Christ! That is, bring me sweet death. Bring me out behind a barn. If that ever happens to me, if I ever get short-term memory loss and all I'm watching is Van Wilder, you have permission to euthanize me.
Isn't that how they get Cooper's memory back in the third season of Twin Peaks? Is they show him Van Wilder?
Good Lord.
Bryden, what do you think of the Critters?
I didn't really like this. I'm sorry. It just wasn't like, I don't want. It's not like I'm like above this like creature features of genre. I mean, like a few years after this movie comes out, there's the movie.
No, it's okay. You are. You talk about it all the time. No,
no. It's okay.
Bryden only likes Deep Rising. That's it.
Well, that movie's awesome.
Well, yeah.
But I also
I need to see that.
You know, I like Tremors from a few years late after this comes out. That's really fun, and I feel like that's like one where like you really get not to like make this movie's case of like how that movie has like the characters that you really like latch on to, especially because like you have actors like Fred Ward and Kevin Bacon who are like really charismatic and funny. Bacon's reaction shots to the Tremors, the underground creatures in that movie is so funny. But like I don't know, I didn't think the characters were especially distinctive in this movie. You were talking about how like it is like a pretty typical American family dynamic, and like that's true. I don't know that the movie's really doing anything with that though, other than like they're kind of sort of like the typical horror structure. A lot like one thing I was learning about like horror movies when I took a class on them a few years ago was like how like often they start with like the family in disarray and like they'll often by the end of the movie they'll have like the order will be like restored or something like that, or like if they're not in disorder at the beginning, then the ending will be like questioning, well, was that order actually like good in the first place? It was something like that. I may be like fudging the wording a little bit from what I learned, but here it's just like the brother and sister don't get along, and then I don't know, they get along at the end of the movie. I mean, yes, it's because they survived this thing, but I feel like when you get to like the third act of the movie, when I think it's Scott Grimes' character who's going out to like, or it's the sister's going out to get something, and like they have like this moment where like all of a sudden like they're like super emotional with each other, and it doesn't really, for me it didn't really hit. Like I didn't feel like the movie had done the work to get us to that moment. It's not exactly the actors' faults and everything. I just don't think these characters are all that great to begin with. And I feel like Emmett Walsh, like I mean I love that. I love him as a performer. We've recently lost him, and that's like a real loss to like a lot of movies, because like if you watch like a lot of movies from the 70s and 80s, he'll just be there in like little roles, and like he always makes things better. But I just feel like he's not really in the movie that much, and I feel like he's just kind of like driving around aimlessly for a lot of the movie. And I didn't think like the action was especially dynamically filmed. The special effects are good, but like how they're filmed, like it's just, I found it pretty rudimentary. And I think my thing with this and the second movie is that like it's the horror comedy aspect, and of course you want to get the tonal balance right, but I feel like it undercuts itself way too much with like the jokey David Newman music and like the sound effects of the critters too, and the aliens and everything. I mean, like this is not about the critters and everything, but at the start of the movie you have like the bounty hunters who are talking their alien language, and they're talking sort of like this, and I'm like, this is like like the laziest impression of how I don't know how does an alien talk,
I kind of loved it though. I kind of loved how I was like, oh, we really don't get like cheesy, like very like throwbacky stuff like that.
Yeah. Has anybody rode that ride at Disney World, the extraterrestrial ride?
No. What's it like?
It used to be, it's gone now, but it was like extraterrestrial encounter. And it was like a theater ride. Well, the aliens at the beginning of the movie just remind me of that. They're all shocked. Yeah, they're schlocky. It's like a Disney World animatronic kind of thing, yeah, mixed with some Roger Corman kind of energy and stuff like that. So it was sort of fun in that regard. But that's what popped in my mind.
I thought you were going to say that there's a Critters ride at Disney World, and I was about to start booking my flight.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah, that would kick ass.
They did ruin Space Mountain for a bit. They just showed up there.
Yeah.
That is funny, though, Bryden, now that you're thinking about it. I'm imagining if they did ADR for that stuff, they were just, like, plugging their nose in front of the microphone like this.
Yeah. Get the guy that does the voice of Squidward. Get his ass on the phone. We need him.
You know what? I would watch another Critters movie if every other character was Squidward.
I mean, yeah.
Oh, please. Every time, like, a critter, like, eats a person.
Yeah.
Goodness. Yeah.
We're covering SpongeBob movie next week, right?
Please, I would be all for that.
That would kick ass. Bryden, continue. Sorry.
No, it's all good. But I don't know. I just feel like this, like, kind of, it's a little too goofy, I think, for me to take it too serious, to sort of, for any of the horror to hit. I mean, there's like, and there are moments when like it does get like kind of weighty with like the consequences of like this sort of terrible situation that they're in, and it feels like tonally dissonant and everything. Like when Dee Wallace has like a moment where she's like, I can't even remember like exactly what it is that her kid asks. Like if she asks him like to do something and she says something, and then the kid says something back, and then she's like, "Why should I check the gun?" She like screams at her kid.
Oh yeah.
Dee Wallace is almost acting in a different movie than everybody else.
If the
but
movie
I
were
kind
like
of love it.
better and walking that tonal line better, I feel more delicately. I feel like at that moment would hit, but here it just felt like kind of out of place for me.
Well, Kevin also mentioning that they had to rebuild the house. I almost imagine that Dee Wallace like improvised that like scream sob of like after the critters are dead, but then she kind of realizes our house is gone.
Yeah.
like that's the
In the
reason
original
why
ending,
they had to, like...
the cop car from M. Emmett Walsh, who does nothing in this movie, and I think that's actually kind of funny because he goes into the house, he's like, "I got this," and then one of the fucking androids or whatever just chunks his ass out.
Yeah.
But yeah, like in the original ending, that he drives them in a cop car back to their house after it exploded, and she just gets out and cries, and then they get their cat back, and then they just drive off.
Yeah.
Just like you kind of need the ending where the house, magically gets back together because this kid has a button that one of the aliens gave him, because you know what, why not?
Yeah.
They kind of did that a little bit with like movies that were like, I guess this isn't really aimed for kids, but like how they changed the ending of The Witches for the Nicholas Roeg adaptation. Like, it kind of made me think of that sort of stuff, which I don't have a problem with in that movie because that movie's for kids too. But yeah. Also, I guess one other thing that I did think about in retrospect over the past week since I've watched it is the space cops serve no real purpose.
No,
they don't.
They're useless.
They literally are like, okay, we have to make this disguise. Although they do have that really cool face melding thing, which is like pretty goopy and weird and awesome.
Yeah,
and almost too graphic for a PG-13 movie, but who cares? It rules. Like I'm glad they got away with that. But they pretty much do just be like, we have to show up in human disguises, and they really don't do anything except disrupt people's Saturday night or whatever, blow something up, and then like just walk
Like there's
away.
an entire house where critters are at, and they're just like at a bar, and they're just like, "Hey man, you see critters?" And they're just like, "You look like you read, boy," and then they just like blow something up.
yeah.
You like reading, boy?
And that's almost why they have to rebuild that house, because they're protagonists. And so, like, if they just left the rest of the movie where they just blew the thing to hell and then walked away, how could you make a sequel with them come back as good guys? Because then the kid's just going to be like, "You just blew up my house in the last movie."
It does.
They had to rebuild it.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. It's kind of like they tested it for audiences, and then they got a response for like they didn't do anything. Like like
they made it worse.
Yeah.
My job here is done. You guys didn't do anything, didn't I? Also, we get the names for the bounty hunters in the sequel, and their names are Ugg and Lee. That is peak comedy right there, man.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. It just took me until now to get that. Jesus Christ.
We're all tired, Charlie. It's fine. Yeah, Bryden, did you have anything else?
No, not especially. I mean, yeah, like mostly I think like the special effects are pretty solid, especially when you factor in this is like only like what made for like a couple $1 million. That is fairly impressive. But I don't know. I wish it were filmed like a little more dynamically. There's not really a lot in Herrick's direction of this visually that sticks out to me. Yeah, and like again, like I just didn't. I mean, you mentioned like Gremlins and everything, and again. Yes, this movie was written before. This movie was written before Gremlins. That's totally fine. I'm not like deducting points for that and everything for Gremlins being it to the punch. But Gremlins, like that's a movie that like now I haven't seen in like close to 20 years. So it's
a much better movie. Gremlins is a much better movie than this. I will absolutely agree with you on that.
I think that movie has like moments where like the Gremlins are like really funny and or like they're villainous like in a mischievous sort of way, like when like they're doing like sort of shadow puppet sort of things in the movie theater and like eating all the food and stuff. But then like they're also like killing people, and then like I think the way they look at the end of that movie is like really scary, like when the one leg is like sort of like boiled and like the sunlight is just sort of like a skeletal sort of like body part to it. Like that's really cool, and like that's like stuff that sticks in my head, like a decade plus later and everything. Is here like I don't really get any kind of imagery here in this movie that sticks out to me. It feels like a little sanded down for me, especially like when you have Charlie, the character in the movie, saying stuff like, I had in my notes that like when he sees the spaceship, he writes, "What the heck?" He says, "What the heck?" And I'm like, okay, like this feels like something that you would say when it's like, well, we can't go too far because we're PG-13. But anyways, whatever. Sorry.
Gremlins actually goes even further, and that's PG. Although that was responsible for the PG-13 rating, that and Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, and then every mom in America and dad wrote Steven Spielberg saying we're outside your house with pitchforks and demands an answer for this.
What's funny is this movie is like scared to be PG-13, and Critters 2 is like, give us an R, I fucking dare you.
Yeah. That is a very good point. I will also say Gremlins does have like this thematic thing that is definitely more interesting in terms of like, because the whole inciting incident of Gremlins is that this guy goes into a shop in Chinatown and buys this thing saying, please let me introduce this into American culture, and he's like, no, you don't understand what you're dealing with here, and then also has a lot to say about consumerism. Critters isn't really aiming for that, and maybe I was just like happy to watch an old-fashioned like comic movie that doesn't really have, that just is just kind of like, we just want to entertain, and
it's just about some guys.
Yeah,
that's all you need sometimes.
Yeah, I think also another big difference is Gremlins is very character driven with the creatures, and Critters. The one big thing I noticed is it's very much like vermin related. So it reminded me a lot of rats or infestation versus gremlins. Even though there's a slew of gremlins and eventually there's a ton of gremlins, they each have their own little quirks. But Critters is just one big lump of character in itself. That's sort of a different correlation I sort of noticed between the two styles of movies.
And Gizmo, like in Gremlins, you're sympathetic to him because he's just like a sweet little guy and everything. No, there are no sweet little guys in Critters. They're all evil.
Hey,
it's all one character.
Everybody should have left him alone.
Group. Yeah,
that's my hot take. If family move out, Critters move in. Okay.
Yeah.
I will say that my favorite guy in Gremlins is the guy when they go to the bar and he's on the ceiling fan. Like, that's my entire personality, is the gremlin is just running around on the ceiling fan. Critters is just if that guy was a little furry guy, so that's why I love the Critters. We got anything else about Critters before we get into Critters 2?
I just want to mention the dad's huge freaking mason jar that he's drinking out of at the beginning of the movie.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, that's so stereotypical and hilarious, but that's all I got.
I will say this, just because it does bleed into the plot of Critters 2, is Don Keith Opper, who plays the character of Charlie, who's used to be a pitcher and is an alcoholic now and has no point. I will say, he kind of just walks off with the space cops at the end of this movie, and it's not really clear. Like, I thought he was just following them, and then we get into Critters 2, and it's like, actually, he joined them in space, and I was like, wait, what now? Like, did anyone else get, like, confused of, like, was there really a scene where it said that, okay, I'm gonna go off with them now? Because it just kind of ends with him following them, asking them questions, and then I started Critters 2.
They're desperate.
I started Critters 2. I was like, he went with them. Like,
and interestingly, when he joins them, they don't become better at their jobs.
No.
Oh goodness.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I guess he wrote parts of the movie also.
Oh really?
It'd be interesting what he did. I couldn't find out what exactly, but yeah, I guess he was actually a writer. And they wrote that part and made him act in the movie. He wasn't an actor beforehand. So that was sort of interesting.
And then he's in all four of them.
And then he's in all of them because he's like, I'm not an actor. I might as well just finish all the rest of these.
Yeah. So. Okay, let's get started on Critters 2, the main course from 1988. This was released in 1,114 theaters on April 29th, 1988 at 8th place. Budget of $4.5 million, so we got a little more than double the first one. Opening weekend is $1.8 million, and domestic and overall gross is $3.8 million, so bomb. Top 5 films that weekend. Colors, Beetlejuice, Casual Sex. Sorry, I had to say it with the question mark. Above the Law, and I've never known how to pronounce this movie. It's the movie with, it's called, is it Biloxi Blues? Biloxi Blues?
with Matthew Broderick.
This movie was going up against Beetlejuice. No wonder it bombed. I mean, it was,
it's like destroyed.
That's like just asking for it to fail.
Yeah. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, the director Mick Garris, which we'll talk about, he said that he went to go see it like in his neighborhood theater when it came out. There were 3 people at night. And he was like, God damn it. And like he said, like they had a press screen, or not a press screening, an early screening, and like it was packed and everybody loved it and just died. Like, but both of these movies are like made to like exist on home video and just rake up the money because they said it made like tons of money, which is why 3 and 4 were direct to video, and yeah, that's perfect. Number 1 song in the U.S. this week is Where Do Broken Hearts Go by Whitney Houston. And number 1 song in Canada this week is Get Out of My Dreams and Get Into My Car by Billy Ocean. Is that an anthem in Canada, Bryden?
I don't know if it's a Canadian anthem, but I do know it. That's a fun one. It's I think I first heard about Billy Ocean because there's an episode of Everybody Hates Chris, but the little sister is obsessed with getting like one of his records.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's also like I never saw this movie properly, but like I think around this time there's that movie License to Drive with the 2 Coreys, and they play that song in the trailer.
Of course they do.
Yeah.
That's what the entire movie's about. Is that just needle dropping Billy Ocean. Plot description from Google: when alien critters' eggs hatch, setting their sights on devouring the small farm town of Grover's Bend, Charlie and his bounty hunter friends return to Earth to destroy them. Doesn't even talk about how Brad from the first movie comes back and has to deal with it or nothing. That's all Google. That's all Google says. There's guys here, deal with it. And you know what? That's great. It's written by David Tooley, credited as D.T. Tooley. This is his first script. What, Brad? Did you?
No, I forgot that was his name. I saw like the spelling of his name is very unusual, like or unique, I should say. Twhohy, and I was like, wait a minute, is that like the guy who I think it is? And it's like, the guy who wrote like the Riddick movies and The Fugitive. Yeah. It's like, I mean, that's really cool.
This is his first script. He sent the script to New Line, and they basically said, this is good, but it could be better. And David said, this is the best I got. So Mick Garris is credited for writing as well, as he touched it up afterwards. Tooley went on to write The Fugitive in 1993, Waterworld in 95, The Arrival in 96, which he also directed, and he wrote and directed all the Riddick films. Directed by Mick Garris, this is his first directed film. After this, Psycho 4: The Beginning in 1990, Sleepwalkers in 1992. That movie, I watched that for the first time. That movie's wild.
The movie is insane.
Yeah, I mean,
the movie starts, and here are your villains. Also, incest. Lots of incest.
They're just like, oh, well, that's weird. Is there anything else about them? They're like cat werewolves or something like that. And you're like, we're 5 minutes into this film.
Yeah, is there any reason why they're fucking? And the movie's like, no, I mean, not really.
It's just like, well, see, kids, this is written by Stephen King, and Stephen King liked a little bit of the nose candy, and where am I at? The Stand miniseries in 1994, The Shining miniseries in 97, Riding the Bullet in 2004, and that's what I got. I just want to say that I do love Mick Garris as like a person. He started out as a horror movie journalist and making of TV shorts for films like The Thing, and made the making of featurette for Critters. His podcast Postmortem just ended recently, but he has interviews with everybody on it, and it's just awesome. It's great. Starring Scott Grimes, who returns as Brad from the first movie, Leanne Curtis as Megan. Bryden, I saw that you watched a movie that she was in called Baby It's You recently.
That's a lovely movie. It's early John Sayles. Yeah, that's like a romance between Rosanna Arquette and Vincent Spano. Incredible music throughout. I think that was like one of the reasons why like it wasn't seen for a long time, because it has like a lot of like needle drops from people like Bruce Springsteen and like Smokey Robinson. It's a really sweet movie, and kind of like interesting how like it like starts out like sort of like this sort of swooning quality for like for between these two teens, but then like sort of actually gets into the complexities of the relationship as they sort of like go on different paths in life. It's a really nice melancholy little movie. Would highly recommend that to anyone who hasn't seen it.
Trivia. Writer David Tooley said in an interview with Starlog that Critters 2 is something I'm still not terribly pleased is on my resume. And you know what? I'd rather watch Critters 2 than probably like the last like 2 Riddick movies.
Well, I was just, you were talking about the Riddick movies. I mean, I never saw this one, but like, isn't like in the second 50 Shades movie that's like, there's the Chronicles of Riddick
Yes.
poster.
He has a poster of Chronicles of Riddick.
I mean,
what?
What if like
In
there was
his
like, it's like,
room.
I don't know, what other posters do we have? Critters 2? Like, I mean, would it be better if they had the Critters 2 poster in his room?
Chronicles of Riddick is a movie that I watched on HBO as a kid, but I couldn't tell you a thing that happens in it other than Judi Dench is wearing white flowy things and only shows up like every half hour in that movie for no reason whatsoever.
I want to rewatch Pitch Black. That's for sure.
I want to see
wonder if-
Pitch Black.
yeah.
I've heard
I
it's fun.
wonder if that holds up. Garrus got the chance to direct after having worked for Steven Spielberg on the TV show Amazing Stories as a screenwriter. Garrus initially turned down the offer to direct, but later accepted, citing that he was a big fan of the first movie and wanted to make a sequel more scary than the first one. And I will say this movie is more of a comedy horror than a horror comedy like Critters is. It's basically a comedy.
It's the Gremlins to the new batch of the Critters franchise. I mean, that's
I
kind
need
of
to
what it
watch
feels
that.
like.
I've seen all 4 Critters movies, but I haven't seen Gremlins 2. What's wrong with me?
Oh, Gremlins 2 rules.
Yeah,
That movie's a blast.
it's a lot of fun.
The Chiodos did return to do the creature effects on this, creating over 50 puppets for this film. And we will get to maybe just the best special effect I've ever seen. This was shot in 40 days. Apparently it was shot in like the coldest winter wherever they shot it. Like we'll get to it, but there's a scene where somebody is topless, and apparently it was like the coldest day in 100 days. It was like 3 degrees outside, and they were just like, what a trooper, because yeah, everybody was like frozen on that set. Producers didn't want Emma Walsh to come back for the sequel because he apparently wasn't easy to deal with, so they brought back this character that everybody, remembers. They bring him back and he does nothing again.
It's Barry Corbin who plays him, right? Who's like, I think,
Yeah.
isn't he the guy in who says in No Country for Old Men, you can't stop what's coming,
Yeah.
Yep.
I listened to I think it was the 30 or 35th anniversary episode on Postmortem about that, and he was on there, and that is the most Texan I've ever heard a man, is that man. Like, 1,000%. It's nuts.
Grover's Bend. It's just a speck on the map of the universe.
Transform.
They get a different class of tourist here.
Company's coming.
Noisier. Pushier. They're turning this peaceful little town into dinner. Critters 2.
I can't hear you. Get anybody out there, hear me.
We need a sheriff.
Go check the yellow pages.
Those hungry hairballs from outer space are on a roll.
Let's just get help. Oh, who are we gonna call? Critter Busters?
And they'll eat anything.
We're gonna end up tomorrow's leftovers.
There must be hundreds of them.
Critters 2, the main course.
You got nothing to lose but your life.
Okay, that's all the trivia I have, so I'll get into my kind of ramblings here. One of the grossest things I've ever seen is in this movie. A man scoops out dog food with a spoon into a bowl and then licks the spoon. I almost turned off the film. There's a scene where all the critters are just absolutely fucking up an all-you-can-eat buffet. It just made me so happy. The scene has 2 boner sound effects, and I thought that was great. And then one critter gets shot, and it gets like shoved into a deep fryer. It's just so awesome.
Oh, yeah.
And then one of the critters rolls out and hits a group of people, and we get a bowling ball sound effect. What more do you want? It's so good. There's a Nightmare on Elm Street stand-in in this movie, so that was interesting. My whole initial thoughts is going to be they turn into a giant critters ball, and it's the dopest shit I've ever seen. And then they run over a guy, and all of his flesh gets taken off. It is maybe the dopest shit.
It's really
Yeah.
cool when that happens.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
Yeah, that's how I want to go.
1,000%. They try to blow him up, and all they did was make him stronger. Yeah. I will say that I don't really. I mean, I get it as a narrative device, but having Charlie like kamikaze himself into the critters ball.
Yeah.
When it's the same ship from the first one that those
Yeah.
critters hit a button, hit a laser, and blew up the house. It's just like, so you couldn't just do that? You wanted to be like, oh no,
Yeah.
what happened to Charlie? And I was like, I don't care.
He's pulling a Randy
Yeah.
Quaid Independence Day.
Independence Day. That's what I thought too. Yeah.
I fly. I'm pilot.
Also, this movie totally cheats because he shows up at the end, spoiler alert, with a parachute attached, and I'm like, the way it's edited, there is no way that with the way it's shot and edited that you could have ever hit an eject button or even landed to the point where he would be okay.
Like,
with
what
the
if he showed up
parachute.
like, it's like,
Yeah.
hey guys, I had a parachute, but he's got like severely burned and everything.
yeah, exactly.
Just bring him back like the house. Just press the button. There you go.
Oh man, all of his flesh just comes back onto his body.
Yeah, that would have been amazing.
That would kick ass, actually. Yeah, you know how all those like spaceships, you got parachute buttons, you know? Just always need those. Yeah, that's all I got to say.
Yeah, because if the everyone needs a parachute in space.
Yeah, there's a lot of gravity.
Yeah, it's fine. You just hit the button and then you just like shoot out, but then you just stay there and you're like, ah, shit. Yeah.
Also, doesn't come with a spacesuit or anything. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
I will say that the first Critters is probably a better movie, but the second one is more fun. I will say that the first half is kind of not that interesting, but then when the critters start really messing shit up, I'm just like, oh, this is a fucking blast, dude. Like, there's a chase scene between a truck and a giant critter ball, dog. Like, what more do you want? So, I mean, yeah, overall it's fine, but I mean, by the end of it, I was just hooting and hollering and got the police called on me, but it was so worth it. I don't know what to tell you. Blake, Critters 2 thoughts versus the first one, anything?
It's definitely more self-aware. It knows how to, get to the punch right away, and I definitely appreciate that. Like I said, the first movie is more of that homage to the atomic era. The first movie reminded me of, like the beginning of the Blob with the old farmer finding an alien, that kind of energy. And this movie is just like, all right, we know what people pay money for it. It's just blood and guts and creatures, and they went full-blown Gremlins in this one, obviously, with that whole restaurant, the burger joint scene, because they're doing all the typical Gremlins things, and that they all have different personalities, and you have the one that has the hair shot off the top of his head, and he says bitchin', and
oh my god,
yeah.
The comic timing of these little guys, you gotta love them.
Yeah. I actually, another little subtle thing is I like a lot of the set design in this one more, and that tends to get overshadowed by the creatures, obviously. But it was more for example, the little antique store kind of thing. There's all these big signs, or the daycare center. All these big grandiose signs and stuff like that, versus the first movie was pretty tamed down, and I'm sure that there was a difference of budget for sure. The first movie, they had to sort of have a little test market to see how good they were, and there was enough success where they could go full blown in the second movie. But I guess overall, I just appreciate that the second movie was allowed to just sort of go balls to the wall a little bit more. It sort of reminded me of, and I don't know everybody's temperature tone on Child's Play, but it sort of reminded me of the difference between Child's Play 1 and Child's Play 2, and how Child's Play 2 is way bigger and more slapstick and cartoony and brighter. And I think the same goes for Gremlins 1 and Gremlins 2. They're both great, but Gremlins 2, I think, is a little bit of a better time, for me at least.
I would say the same thing about Child's Play. The first one is probably a better movie, but the second one's more fun.
Yeah, for sure.
Bryden, you just watched them.
I just saw the first 3
curious.
recently, and I'm glad you mentioned too the Child's Play, because this movie kind of the Scott Grimes character is he's sort of saying, oh yeah, I made up all that stuff, which is what they do in Child's Play through. It's I just made up the whole thing about the killer doll and everything. It was all a lie, and it's of course it's not a lie. It's
yeah, and he comes back 2 years later and 2 years cooler. And I was just looking at him, and he's got the earring and the hairdo,
the jean
and I was
jacket.
look at this kid, he's ready to fight some critters.
He looks way older than 2 years older.
Way
though.
older.
Yeah, I know.
My
That is,
goodness.
like, this kid is, like, potentially sexually active in this one, which is, like, a little weird compared to where he was in the first one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was sort of hilarious. I like the Easter theming. I thought that was pretty brilliant.
I was about to ask, is there another horror movie that takes place on Easter apart from, like, I don't know, Passion of Christ, sort of? I don't know. Like, I don't know. It does also feel like we left the first one with them, like, having eggs in, you know, the basket. And then they were like, I know what we can do for the second movie. Easter! They're all painting the eggs. Like,
well, I know, like, Gremlins has Christmas. And so I didn't know if maybe that was, like, a correlation. They're like, let's just go after Easter. And then I know they also both movies came out in April, I think. So that's prime Easter time.
I'm looking it up, and there's plenty of, like, no budget ass Easter movies, but definitely Critters 2, and you know that anthology movie Holidays from 2016 that has a section of Easter, and then I just saw it. Oh, I mean, barely a horror movie, but Wallace and Gromit: Curse of the Were-Rabbit. Come on now.
There you go.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
But yeah, that's about it. So yeah, I will say the shot of the guy who's in the bunny suit and just gets fucking thrown through the stained glass is very funny.
Great. It looks like something out of Jackass.
Brighton.
Yeah, I was pretty ambivalent about this one too, I gotta say. I do think that there are it having a little bit of a nastier edge with the violence did sort of make it a little bit more memorable for me. Like you said, like the bit with the critters sort of roll over the guy and take off all of his skin. That's really like a very striking image. Yeah, like the critters themselves are they're like memorable creature designs. But I just found this like a little too toothless, like, and with like how goofy it is, like it's like sounds like just like fucking marching band music playing whenever like you're like leading up to like the suspense set pieces. And you know, again, like the bounty hunter stuff, like it's just them being so bad at their jobs. Like it's like I don't find it especially funny, and also like the movie just like will like stop dead in its tracks. Like the scene where they show up at the burger joint, there's like, I'd say for like a full minute they just like stand around after they've entered the restaurant just to watch the critters tear up the place. And I'm just like,
should have been longer.
Should have been longer. But I'm just like, can we just like move this along, please? And I also found like it's interesting. I feel like the first movie is like pretty sound for the most part with its like geography and like where everyone is in relation to each other. Like I think there's like a moment in the first movie where like I'm like, wouldn't the sister be able to like hear all the chaos that's going on in the house, like even though she's just in the barn like next door, but like
making out with Billy Zane.
Yeah, I'm playing that music. But then like in this one I found like it just kind of baffling, like where it's like, how is everyone in the town able to see what's going, where is everything in relation to each other, where it's like they're able to see with binoculars all the way over to like the meat factory and everything. And I'm just like, what, like how are they able to see like that? It's like it's close enough that they're able to see it there, but like they have to drive to it. And I'm just like, I found that kind of confusing. And yeah, again, like the characters I don't think are especially strong. I mean, like we said, like Scott Grimes, the only character development he gets is just like him having like a new fashion look.
Yeah.
But,
I will say really quick is that Lynn Shay gets more to do in this movie, and she fucking kills the shit out of it.
Yeah, is she played the same character as she did in the last movie?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Lynn Shay is always great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, it's. And I just feel like, again, like this movie, again, also with the characters, like, and them, like, not earning moments, like, there's it seems like there's going to be a conflict set up with, like, the shitty local bully who's, like, hitting on Megan, and then, like, Scott Grimes is fighting him, and then he disappears for, like, a long part of the movie, and then, like, he, like, gets his moment of, well, I mean, like, I guess the movie sort of undermines it, where, like, he doesn't really do anything, and, like, it's, like, the joke of, like, oh, like, he was talking all this shit and didn't really do anything, but I'm, like, thinking, man, you could have just like I was thinking like if there's a character who's being begged to be killed in this um for like used just as like cannon fodder.
If anybody gets rolled over by a critter ball,
It's that asshole.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't know. I think this just like wasn't really my tempo. But that's okay. I don't really have much to say about this. It's kind of, aside from like just having a bit being a little bit grosser than the first movie, this like I found to be kind of more of the same from the first movie. Although I will say a couple things. This is sort of combining the first two movies. I did like that there's at least in the first movie and this second one, there is at least one clever gag in both movies of like with the body morphing. In the first movie, it's the bit where they take the body of the cop who's being eaten, and they take his body, but it's like the body of like his mutilated corpse and everything, so he looks all fucked up. That's really
it's great.
That's really clever. And then like just sort of thinking about the logistics of how that power works. And in the second one, I was thinking to myself, like, at one point in the movie, and I'll credit to the movie for being ahead of me on this one, I was thinking, wait a minute, why don't they have they ever thought to disguise themselves as critters? And then it happens in the last act of the movie, and I was like, oh, okay, you know what? That's nice. I like that. That was a fun little surprise.
Charlie, before you go, is Stigmata an Eastern movie, you think?
I think it could be if you want it to be.
Stigmata is a Christmas movie if you want it to be.
It can be any movie. It can be any kind of movie if you want it to be.
There was a movie called Night of the Lepus. You ever seen that?
Oh, that movie's
yeah.
I saw that at the fucking Wellfleet Drive-In when John Waters hosted a double bill of that with Kitten with a Whip during the pandemic.
Yeah, that movie's slow, but
great.
it's fun.
It was fun to see at a drive-in too, because anytime there were giant bunnies on screen, everybody was honking their horns like crazy. So it was a great drive-in movie.
Yeah.
And John Waters introduced it, so that was fun.
Yeah, it was perfect.
I am like Bryden in that this is it's funny that we just talked about how this one has a different director, different writers, stuff like that. It really does feel like the same exact people who made the first one kind of made this one to me, and I like it for the same reasons that I like the first one. But like what we were talking about, I do think it's interesting. The first one mostly set at night. This one almost majority of it's set during the day.
Mm-hmm.
I would say for the most part, interestingly enough.
Besides the end, yeah.
Besides the ending. Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add that I didn't say about the first one, why I like the first one, but also why I don't think it's like anything great. But I had fun. I don't really have a whole lot to say. Everything that's already been brought up is endearing, and nasty little fun has kind of been brought up already. The giant critters bowling ball that literally turns someone into a skeleton. Lin Shaye gets more to do. Yeah, I really, not to like draw a blank, but it's just like, yeah, I mean, it's, if you liked the critters in the first one, you'll probably like them in the first one. Yeah. And if you didn't, then yeah, might not be your thing, and that's okay too.
Imagine somebody that like loves critters and watched the second one, they're just like, this is horse shit. Like,
now what is this?
Well, I mean, Ebert gave the first movie 3 stars and then gave this one 1 star. I need to read his reviews to sort of get his thoughts.
Yeah.
But
he was like, critters great. Oh, we're gonna just keep dealing with these motherfuckers?
Yeah. I mean, they exist to show off the special effects, the makeup, and stuff like that. Yeah. And just on those levels, I mean, yeah, it's somehow nastier and meaner, but also far lighter and but like more self-aware.
And slapstick, I think.
Yeah, I mean, am I gonna remember these movies in a few weeks? Probably not. But
I will be in the home telling other old men about the critters and what they meant to me.
I mean, like it's also these types of, I miss, horror movies that were kind of light and had a dark sense of humor that were just fun. I mean, these movies purely exist as entertainment. Like there's not really any type of allegory or social commentary going on with these things. They're kind of just special effects exercises, and as those, I mean, I found them mischievously enjoyable. I don't know.
Again, I don't find these movies especially memorable on a visual level, but I just think this is interesting, the credentials of the 2 cinematographers for the first 2 movies, because the first movie is shot by Tim Surstedt, who seems to have shot like a lot of Stephen Herrick's other movies. Like he also shot Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead and Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. But then like this one is shot by Russell Carpenter, who went on to shoot Hard Target, True Lies, Titanic, Charlie's Angels. Yeah. So that's kind of cool that like the career that he went on to have. I thought that was interesting.
What if the critters were the reason the Titanic hit the iceberg? That would be
No, it's not an
interesting.
iceberg. It's just a giant critters ball.
Yeah.
Imagine. Just wrapping up here, I would like to hang out with these guys. They would probably want to murder me, but I think if I came in peace and just wanted to, like, I don't know, go to like an all-you-can-eat buffet and just wanted to... There's nothing funnier than guys just eating. The little guys eating
Yeah.
and giggling. And the third one, they do the same thing into a kitchen where Leo DiCaprio's there, and one of the critters just sprays flour on all of them, and they just giggle. They're just having a good time.
Yeah.
I like that everybody. Yeah, the main reason that these guys are evil is they eat too much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do want to mention, I thought this was funny, and I caught it at the very end. I like how they put a little thing that they like to thank the people of Grover's Bend, Kansas,
Yeah.
for their participation, and the city itself doesn't exist.
No, they built
So
that
I
entire
thought
set.
yeah, so I thought that was sort of a funny little tongue-in-cheek kind of thing at the very end.
Yeah.
So
I think the Coen brothers stole that when they did this based on a true story at the start of Fargo.
yeah,
I think they were big critters' heads.
Yeah, and then everyone who made Critters saw Fargo, and they were just like, "This is absurd." Like,
yeah,
There's no way that body would fit in that wood chipper.
yeah.
Man, imagine if the critters were used. If Peter Stormare and Steve Buscemi had the critters instead of the wood chipper, just we'll just hand this guy off to the critters.
William H. Macy just burying a critter in the snow.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Almost Major. Please rate, review, and subscribe to us on iTunes. Please follow the pod on Twitter at Almost Major to keep up to date with what movies we will be covering in the future. Myself, I can be found on Twitter and Letterboxd at Kev Bonesy. Bryden can be found on Twitter at Bryden Doyle and on Letterboxd at J Doyle. Charlie can be found on Twitter and Letterboxd at CT Nash91. Once again, thank you for listening.